Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who is using the power of an alien brain to climb to the top of the natural order.
Tim Longo.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what you're doing.
that's
Maybe
what,
it's not what you're doing. Maybe it's what the Pikmin are doing.
I guess I haven't gotten to
You
that
have
point
not
of the
gotten to that point.
story.
There was a point later on in when you're close to the end where it's like he's musing, Olimar is musing like, what is going on with these Pikmin? Are they
Yeah.
using me to get to the top of the food chain? It's
Oh,
a
that's
very
hilarious.
yeah, it's very good.
He's got
Anyway,
a lot of great musings.
yeah, he does. His musings are a lot of fun. We talked about them a bit last week. The sort of dynamic diary and his logs and things like that. It's cool. But before we get to our final discussion of Pikmin, we have an email we're going to read up here at the top. It is subject is defeating games hype promo email. Because I guess I don't do this well enough, but it is from Nolan. He says, "What is this? A crossover episode? Calamity, Nolan, and Biostats here with a special message from one pair of DGC hosts to the other. Defeating Games for Charity, our annual fundraiser for the incredibly rad Video Game History Foundation, is this upcoming weekend on January 23rd through 25th. We've got 25 streamers with over 50 hours of fun playing our fave games to save games. You can visit defeatinggames.com to learn more. Fans of the DGC podcast will recognize many of the streamers as interview guests, including Kyle and Error 13 with an untouchable Silk Song No Damage run, Lost Lake 86 digging deep into Decked Out 2, a Minecraft mod that turns it into a dungeon crawler deck builder. Oh, Noise's godlike gameplay adapting to the whims of the community in Hades with crowd control. Brad Smith exhibiting stylish art games Teenage Blob and Pilgrims. Kaon bookending the event with wily antics in Untitled Goose Game and Mega Man X. Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end, telling short stories in Dwarf Fortress. I see what he did there. VGA, Video Games History Foundation Library Director Phil Salvador, demystifying Myst while detailing their extensive Cyan archive. And best of all, maybe, Calamity Nolan's color commentary on his Splatoon 2 speedrun. I don't know how you speedrun a multiplayer game, but we will see. That's just a third of the streamers. It'll be a fun time whenever you tune in. Excitingly, two of our interview guests are making a spy versus spy online shooter called Project Octavia, which streamers from the event will play with the devs if we raise $10,000 over the course of the weekend. But we need your help to get there. Most direct way of reaching our goal is donating at defeatinggames.com/donate. But you also greatly help us by sharing the website with your friends and family, reposting us on Blue Sky, and he gives a link, which I will share in the show notes, but it's basically defeatinggames.bsky.social, and liking our videos and shorts on YouTube, which is youtube.com/@defeatinggames. That link will be in the show notes as well. Together, we can make this the biggest event ever. Hope to see you all there this weekend. We now return you to the other DGC hosts. Which I guess is us. I will say the Big Bang was probably the biggest event ever, but I'm not going to quibble.
Oh, what? You must be a evolutionist.
A former physicist, former physics major. I am, sir. I am. So that's coming up. I think a lot of that I've said before, but there are some glances at who the hosts are. The schedule is also on that defeatinggames.com site. It is a cool schedule filled with cool people who are doing cool things. So come out and support and show your love. Seems like it'll be a good time. I'll be dropping into streams from time to time. Tim, I know, watches a ton of it, more than I usually do, but
yeah, I try.
I'm often in there lurking, but
I mean, it's a commitment to watch everything, but we'll see how it goes. And there's obviously some ones that are when I should be sleeping, but
yeah.
I mean, if you look at the schedule, it's just like, I want to watch that. Oh, I want to watch that. Oh, like every one of them is something interesting. And then there's just a lot of variety too, and just diverse experiences. So yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to the group, to that group, to or of organizers.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. It's bigger than ever. There's even some things I've never seen before, or seen rarely in some cases as well. So yeah, it'll be something. Um, a lot of the streams I think do get uploaded later, and they've been doing shorts and things on that YouTube channel, so you can go check that stuff out. Give them a subscribe and all of that stuff. Ring the bell, I think, is a thing you say. So do that, whatever that means. And yeah, hope we see you there. But now on to Pikmin, our final episode, because of course you beat the final boss today, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, my memory. I'm sure we talked about the fact that we're doing 3 episodes for this, and somehow I just didn't process that. So
Yeah.
I probably could have pushed harder for sure. I'm on the cusp. I think I'm close. I feel well. I don't know if I'll get 30 because you don't. Is it true that you don't have to get all 30 to finish the game? Is that true or no?
I mean, that's the claim. I haven't done that, so I can't say
Okay.
one way or the other. I mean, it does sort of tell you as you get, like I commented last week, it sort of tells you, sort of relaxes that constraint. Says, well, I don't really need all the pieces of the
Yeah.
ship to make it home.
He's.
Um,
I
but
got
you
a
don't get to the
message.
final area unless you get 29 pieces, and then the 30th piece is in that final area.
Oh, you can't get to the final piece.
Right.
Oh, interesting. So I wouldn't be able
Um,
to see the boss. Okay,
but
well, we'll see
there
how it
are
goes.
there are pieces that are less necessary. I would say one of the pieces that you find is his massage machine.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
talks about how he's really looking forward to using that. There's like his pilot seat, which is like a, I don't know, it's like a beanbag that this probably was supposed to be, but it's like a cushion, but it's like sewn together out of like random quilted bits and things like that. It's the least science fiction thing piece of the ship in the game.
yeah.
It's very funny. It is really odd, some of the things that are in it. But yeah, anyway, it he does sort of say, well, maybe I could make it, with fewer pieces, but I haven't tried to do that, so I don't know that that's true. I'm sure it is, but I don't know which pieces are required and which are not. So
Interesting. Well, now I'm kind of. I mean, I would like to get all 30, and I will endeavor to still finish at some point in my life. But now I'm kind of. I will try to do that. But now I'm interested to know if that is possible, if it is possible to finish early, and if that is essentially an alternate ending,
yeah,
and what changes because of it. There, I got a log from him at one point that said something about I think he was dreaming or some. He said something about being in a dreamlike state where he realized that maybe not all of the pieces were important, but it wasn't like an explicit message that said you don't need to get all the pieces. He just said it in a very nonchalant way, so it was just a weird log message
yeah. I
from
feel
him.
like that might be the first you hear about it, and then later
And he
on,
makes it more definitive.
he seems, but it's never like you only need this many or you only need these ones. It's never that clear. So
Oh, so you're not even sure? Oh, great.
right.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And so, anyway, long story short, as no as is to no one's surprise, I did not finish by this session. Um, but I feel like it. I can see it being possible, but I don't know if you want me to launch into
No, let's go.
go
Let's
straight in.
let's go straight into your issues.
Well, I mean the the TLDR version is I'm now remembering why I didn't finish the game the first time, because I kind of am in a state that I have like I think I just through the trauma of it the first time had just pushed down into the depths of my psyche and just forgot about, and then it came back up the last few sessions I played before this episode, and then I was like, oh, this is a familiar feeling that I'm having right now. And so I mentioned last episode that I had a pretty catastrophic day, where it was definitely on me. I made some mistakes, and I should have, left when I should have quit while I was ahead in some battles, and was stubborn, and then just ended up losing too many because of it. And we talked about that last episode. And in retrospect, I should have replayed that day at the very least. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, maybe I should have just started over, like, and I
Wow.
hate that feeling in any game where I feel like, unless it's built in through, and I won't name names, but unless it's built in through the concept of the game. Um, so it's a demoralizing state to be in when you're at that point. And so basically, as I said last episode, I lost, especially blues and yellows. I think I was down to 0 yellows and 1 or 2 blues when I after we recorded last episode. So
Right.
sessions beyond that have been I think I've gotten maybe 1 or 2 pieces, 1 or 2 more pieces, but I've spent a lot of days and a lot of replaying of days because I'm putting all my time into rebuilding my army. And also I put a lot of time in opening doors. Like, I go to the levels, and I'm kind of like, it's almost like busy work. I'm like
Right. Right.
breaking down walls, turning geysers
Pushing
on.
bridges down. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, getting bridges going. And
Opening
so
the level. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so I was like, well, I was ahead before I started this process. I can afford to eat some days up. Oh no, now I'm behind. And, for lack of a better description, there's a point at this game where I feel like there's like a downward spiral problem,
Hmm.
where I feel like, and then the rebuilding, I'm bouncing around a lot here, but the rebuilding process also for me, and I agree with what you said last time. It definitely is possible, and they've tried to build in ways for you to rebuild if you're really down. But if you were as down as far as I was, there's another sort of, I don't know if it's
Well,
a
there's kind of, so
balancing.
I wanted to ask, like, what are you doing to rebuild? Let's start there.
Well, I'm doing everything I can, to be honest. Like,
No,
I'm
no,
using.
let's be specific. Like, I get
Well,
that you're trying, but what like actions are you taking? Because maybe I can make some suggestions to help you over this get you through
yeah,
this difficult time, Tim.
yeah, maybe.
As
Well,
your therapist here, your Pikmin therapist.
yeah. Other than the flowers, I'm basically focusing on enemies,
Uh-huh.
and using the reds, which I have more of, to take the enemies out, and then using the blues and the yellows to bring them back so they can replenish. So that's helped some, but the tricky part of it is, which relates to another topic I want to talk about this time, is that combat inherently is going to diminish, right? No matter how good you are at it, and if you're middling at it or poor at it, you're going to lose a lot more. And so it's sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back feeling,
Hmm.
and so I'm definitely making progress, and I'm slowly building them up. But then inevitably I get frustrated, or I make a mistake, and then I'm like, I don't want to start this day over yet again. And I didn't get as many as I wanted to. So, yeah, I mean, just the combination of those
Got it.
things.
Well, I do have some recommendations.
Mhm.
One is, I mean, it sounds like you're definitely doing the thing with the pellets, and starting to build up at least a small force of the blues and yellows,
Yeah.
so that you can move things back. But you can actually let the reds bring it almost all the way back,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
pull them off,
Give it to
and
somebody else. Yeah,
give
that's
them
a
to
good
somebody
idea.
else. And the other thing too that I would recommend, just in general, is using the nectar, um, to
Yeah.
basically make your reds tougher, so that
Yeah.
you more will survive. And then the final thing that I didn't hear you doing is that you can use the converter flowers, um, which admittedly took me a while to understand. But to
Yeah. I
convert
just found
reds,
those.
yeah, to convert reds to other things, right? So that you can build
Yeah.
up your forces that way as well. So that's the only piece of it I think you might be missing. But in general, you want to like get those big pucks, from bosses and things, and not just bosses though. Some of the enemies will drop a puck, and like you can have the reds carry them almost all the way back, and then have some yellows, and pick up the yellow puck, and because a yellow puck will, that's 5 will actually, I think, give you more than 5 if the yellows
Yeah,
bring them back and things like
he
that.
said at some point if it's the color of the owner,
It's
then I think
more,
it's double, right, or
yeah,
something.
something like that. So that's
Yeah,
another way to build things up.
yeah, and paying attention to that would
Because
be
I was
better.
I was down to 1 yellow, um, and I ended the game with, I don't know, north of 50. I didn't need as many yellows as I needed reds and blues, I found, um,
Hmm.
because yellows are mostly, I mean, at one point I needed something like 15 or 20, for a piece that was not reachable by any other type. And there were a few of those actually. So there were times where I needed 15 to 20 of the yellows, but other than that, I could do everything with reds and blues. And so I just kind of built yellow back up to where it's like, oh, okay, I have a healthy amount. I was just kind of using targets of opportunity. I would have bodies brought back, and I'd make sure I was there and, you know, counter them at the right time. Just like, hey, drop that, and have the yellows take over when they were close, and just not risk the yellows that I had, and
Yeah,
things like that. So I
yeah,
I do think it's possible, but it is a slog. It is a slog,
it's a
and
slog.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's not. I don't find it that fun, too.
yeah,
It feels like I said. Just coming back to the word demoralizing, which I don't like. Obviously, I don't play games to be demoralized, and
yeah.
in a multiplayer, PvP setting, I get it because you're playing against other players. But in a PvE setting, anyway, it's
Well, and
tricky.
that's why I don't play those games, right?
Yeah,
I don't want
right.
to be. I don't want to be demoralized by other people.
I get it. I get it. So it's it's a bummer, and I think that probably everything would be fine if it wasn't for the day timer, because the process that I'm going through is yielding results for sure, but it's sort of that, again, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because in order to take enemies out, you're gonna lose something. And so it's sort of, you're kind of that give and take of you're going to lose some reds or whatever. Um and and so that process just takes time, right? And I'm always under the gun, but every time a day goes by that I don't get a piece, I feel like I have not done what I wanted to do in that day.
Hmm.
And so I feel like, well, I spent my whole day replenishing. And then the interesting thing that's kind of like not a mini takeaway for me is that this whole these last few gaming sessions I've had, where it is this rebuilding process that I'm trying to do in a systematic way, it all spawned from this one day. This one bad day that happened that has cascaded through the rest of the game. And it was, early-ish, third of the way through the game that it happened. And it's a really intriguing concept to me that could be the case. You know what I mean? That it has that kind of a ripple effect, at least for me, right? For whatever reason, and I know all of this is psychology, and I'm making it worse on myself. It's good to know that you finished with 50 with only 50 yellows, because it reminds me that you don't necessarily need the full a full set of everything all the time to
Right.
succeed. Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe
I had.
my
I had.
standards are too high too.
I had total 226 total Pikmin at surviving at the end.
Okay.
They, one of the things the game does at the end is it gives you stats, of how many parts you got and how many days it took, and like how many Pikmin survived, how many Pikmin you lost over the course of all the time, how many Pikmin you ever sprouted, um,
Hmm.
which I don't know why the surviving plus lost doesn't add up to that. It doesn't even come close, so I don't really understand that. It's almost double, so I'm not really sure why, but anyway. Um, but those are those kinds of stats that are at the end of the game that kind of give you that information. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's reasonable.
yeah,
That's a reasonable number that that maybe I need to chill out about. But I just every time I every time I go after a boss, I'm so nervous about, you know, I guess the stakes are just so high for me, and
mm,
I don't know what it is in this game. I've been trying to figure out what it is in this game that, like in a traditional RTS like StarCraft, doesn't make me feel that way. I don't know if it's just the expendability, um and the building process of rebuilding units is very clear, and precise. And this is actually going to be a partner to another one of my topics, that has had a big impact on my rebuilding process. But it's definitely been some soul searching. I still love the game, and I still think it's a brilliant game in many ways. And of course, it's the first of its kind, so there's going to be some things to iron wrinkles to iron out. Um, so I bet that they have in the sequels.
yeah. We have an email about that later, so we'll get to that as well. Yeah, I definitely I hear you. Like, I mean, there were a lot of days I replayed because I was just like, or I quit midday. It was like, okay,
Oh yeah, I'm doing
that
that
didn't
all
go
the
well.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of times where I'm just like, yeah, I'll probably be fine, and where I'm like, like I had a day where I was I had the last piece on a level, and I was like, oh man, it's counting down 10, 9, 8, and I could see them, and I'm like, they're not going to make it. So I just went out and I got them and I brought them in. I was like, do I want to replay this whole day? I probably could have shaved off the time. I was like, you know what? Nah, you know, I have I had quite a few. I did copy the save at that point, after that day, just in case.
Mm,
Although it would have, I don't know that I had the time to copy it would have been before that day, but um, I did copy it after, and just like, okay, this was the branch point of like, if things went south, this would have been when they went south. So I might want to be more strategic from there about what I did. But I ended up just using that day to do some of the things I talked about as far as rebuilding. And then basically after that, I was never super low. I mean, I got lower in red than I liked, but there was a level where I was like, oh, I can actually, most of what I'm doing is with the blues. I can just have them bring back stuff and then have the reds take it over when it gets close. So I was kind of managing this stuff pretty closely to rebuild red. But now in general, I did not have that kind of experience. But I can understand it, for sure. When I had one yellow, I was like, oh, I don't. This
yeah.
might go badly. But I dug out of it and it worked out. So
Well, and it's yeah. You mentioned the yellows. I think the yellows were, and the blues to a lesser degree, but the yellows specifically were the one that hit me the hardest, I think. And now that you're talking about it, what I'm realizing is that it hit me at a specific time that combined together was pretty unforgiving. It's funny how the game tonally feels like a very forgiving game, but I'm not sure it is
yeah,
gameplay wise,
yeah.
and systemically. And what I realized is that I lost the yellows right before I really needed to dig really deep in the forest navel, which has a lot of walls and a lot of things to use bombs on. And so I kind of was a double whammy for me, because it's like to really progress and get 100% in the forest navel, I needed yellows, and I was at that step and I had none. And
Mm,
so it's like, okay, I have to rebuild, and then I also have to go through the process of breaking down all these walls, and in one of the boss's case, use the yellows. So, and every time you do that, you're going to lose some. So it was kind of like a double whammy for me. So kind of bad. It was just bad luck, I think, in that regard. Or maybe I should have used my reds or something in some other way that I'm not thinking about. But yeah. So anyway,
yeah. I think in the forest naval, there's also an opportunity to convert them somewhere.
There
It's a
is, yeah.
yellow, so
There
you
is a
could,
yellow. I
yeah.
just started using that. Yeah. So yeah, there's a yellow flower there. It
So
and
maybe an
the yellow
opportunity there.
balls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean the funny thing with those flowers is I didn't understand their purpose. I didn't realize they converted. I so early on I came across one that was red and I threw a bunch of reds in it and it spit out a bunch of reds and I was like, did this just make the same number? Like I wasn't tracking how many threw in there. I was just like, let me see what happens. Um, and then a bunch of reds came out and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll pull up all those reds, but I don't really I don't really need that right now, so I just kind of moved on. But there was later a puzzle that made me understand, oh, this converts whatever to the color. It's like put in blues into a red flower and you will get reds out. It's and whatever. It's there's no round robin. It's just anything else will whatever you put in here will turn to red or to yellow, whatever the color of the flower is. And there's a cool that I understood that because there was a puzzle where it's like, how am I going to get? I need yellows over there, but there's water in the way. How am I going? Oh, I
Hmm.
see. There's flowers. I understand now. There's a yellow flower up there, or rather, a blue flower. No, a yellow flower up there, so that I can convert some blues to yellow. And then on the other side, there's a blue flower, so I can get them back. Ah, that's cool.
Yeah,
So
that's neat.
it was a neat puzzle. They don't do a lot of those. They do have a number of places where it's like, well, you really want to get the thing with one color and then like give it to a bunch of reds because it's going to cross some fire, or you need to use blues for part of it and yellows for another part of it. But that was the first time that I actually was like, oh, I've got this thing that I totally didn't get. I had to figure out what they were for, and I thought that was kind of cool that you could ignore an element until they tested you on it. Like, do you actually
Hmm.
know what this does? And you could kind of figure it out from like, well, this would only work if I could somehow convert. Oh, you
Right.
know, from one to the other. So it was kind of cool. Um, one of the okay to shift. I wanted to shift to the sort of level size, game size question because having
Yeah.
these relatively small scale levels meant that you could encounter something like that, and not have it kind of throw off your whole day because it didn't take you forever to get to. It didn't, there might be something else nearby. For me, there was in that case. I was like, because I didn't get it right away. I I was like, well, there's another one over here. Let me go do
Hmm.
that while I'm thinking about this, like how I'm going to solve this problem. Um, and then and things like that. You had mentioned this in pre-show.
Yeah, I on the positive note, I just was commenting on the fact that when you really look at the levels, there aren't that many to begin with for the game. And when you look at them, they're not that big in the grand scheme of things. And not one of my main takeaways, but another sort of thing that I was impressed by, or that I am impressed by, and would take away is just the economy of the game and the not the you know uh, biggie economy, but just the economical nature of the construction of the game is really impressive. Like the levels are not that big, but they use them. They're very dense in what their purpose is, and the different landmarks and the flow of the levels. They use the walls and the doors. I had wrote down a note: doors that aren't doors. Um, to go with the keys that aren't keys. Uh, and so they use blockers and the sort of flow progression of the maps in really interesting ways. So they really make the most out of it, right? So when you start off a level, you might have to go kind of do quite a complicated route to get to a certain area, and then you start slowly unlock, and that obviously reveals some bombs, and then the bombs unlock some of those doors. So pretty traditional flow stuff, but if you were to look at a top down of the maps, as you do in the UI, yeah, I'm just really impressed with that. And it's not a long game overall, but still it feels appropriately sized. and they just get a lot out of a little, because of the way that the game is, the systems work. So yeah, that was my main topic there, was just being really impressed with, especially for a game where they didn't know what a level was for the game, right?
Yeah.
They're creating this from scratch with no preconceived notions. You can't really, even though we've talked about the genres that it has some inspiration coming from, you can't really equate them in any way, because of the puzzle aspect. So I would love to see, which we never will, but I would love to see some of the early prototype blockout levels, and the iterations that they went through to get to the footprints that they ended up with. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's very cool. I mean, I want to say that so there's only 5 levels. One of those levels, the one you start in, only has 2 pieces, and then the final level is just the 1 piece. So that leaves 27 pieces. So basically 9, I assume it's 9 each, but whatever, it might be 8, 8, 9 and 10 or whatever. But basically they find a way to cram in 9 pieces into each of those 3 sort of bigger levels, and it still feels like it doesn't feel like a stretch to get into any individual piece. um it's not like, oh man, I've got to go all the way over there. It's like you said, it's very compact. And part of how they manage that, they have sort of the doors, but also the ecology of their enemies works to their
yeah,
advantage as well. So it's, you kind of, when you do look at the top down, you're sort of thinking, okay, I want to kind of get this group first because if there's a, or together, not necessarily first, but I want to get this group together because, there are enemies over there, but enemies don't repopulate, the next day necessarily. So I kind of want to sweep, in this direction, and like I'm going to
right.
get to those next because then this area should be clear. I shouldn't have to re-kill a bunch of stuff on the way there and things like that. So you also have that going for you, that you kind of can. I'm sure there's a number of plans you could make, but it feels like you can make interesting and useful plans that will take you strategically across these compact maps, as well, but have a ton of variety in them. So it I don't know, it works quite well. I'm also impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, seeing there's many times from the landing zone that you can see when especially when you first get to a map, where you can see parts, um, and but you don't know how to get to them, right? So they actually, as the crow flies, are not that far away, but the process to get to them, inevitably has multiple steps,
Hmm.
and that's, I always love that stuff, right? It's in especially in the sort of the level design world of giving you those um, those landmarks and the composition of that as you see the camera, and then trying to figure out how to get there. And then the shortcutting is obviously a great tried and true tried and true thing too. It kind of, there's times in the level where I feel like they it makes me think about Mario 64 a little bit,
Hmm.
and kind of like when they started to enter into the 3D Mario world, how they would, make maps work from a three-dimensional standpoint, and giving him a flow that isn't, that has um, uh, a new axes added, that third dimension, and the thinking differently, right? They had to think differently about how to move Mario through that, like they had never had to before. And when you look at some of the Mario 64 maps, my vague memory of it is the footprint of them isn't that big, but they got a lot of use out
Yeah.
of the flow to get from point A to point B. And this is not as three-dimensional, of course, because the elevation isn't as critical, but they do, because Olimar has his own limitations, right? And they solve that by geysers and things and other ways. Um, because he has his own limitations, they can really like push him around the map, and it is, in an RTS way, kind of a top down kind of game in a way, because the there's or I guess it's a one direction because you can fall down ledges, but you can't go back up the ledges, for
Right.
instance.
Right.
So yeah, it's just yeah. I just always am. I'm always impressed by that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean,
good reminder.
I would find that I was, and this might shift topics as well, but I would find that I was also, because I was thinking across those sort of multi-day strategies for taking on, because I could kind of see the whole level. I mean, there might be things that I didn't know yet, or didn't know how I had to surmount. And in particular, there were some places where it felt like there are not enough bombs on this level to get this gate down. um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would have to remember every time to, like, oh, make sure I also take a few yellows, get the bombs, set them off on this door, this, obsidian door or whatever, black door that takes more to or black wall or whatever takes more to take out. But I have to do it every time I'm here because
Mm.
otherwise I'll get to the end of the chain and be like, oh, and now I just have to spend 3 days reloading into this level to get enough bombs to take things out. I mean, there might have been enough bombs there and I just didn't see them. But the ones I knew about, were, weren't enough to take it down in one go. So I was like, that, so there were times like that where I was like, that's a little more planning than I expected to have to do. But once I recognized, I was like, oh, okay, I have to stay on top of that. It's just a task I'm going to have to do every day, but so that I'm set up for success later on. But I had enough to do to open up the level in other ways, that was just kind of something I was doing along the way.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a good point that I hadn't also included time as one of the dimensions for this game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Days rather, right? So that even in one run, there's the flow of it, and can you open certain doors, or where are the bombs placed, as an example, beyond the door, so you have to go get them and then come back to open up that shortcut. But then there's also the time or day dimension where it's like, okay, I can plan to do something today that will impact myself tomorrow, which is what I've been doing a lot of, and just kind of because um, my kind of OCD kicks in that I like to kind of do the busy work and get it out of the way so
Hmm.
that I can have a really stellar day and do multiple uh, ship pieces. And so that that does often make me feel good, but it's still busy work, I feel like. So
Yeah.
it's probably easy. I'd make it easier on myself if I did them as I went. But it means that there are a few days that I'm setting up for the future that I'm not getting a piece, so that that's on me as a player. But I feel like as just a macro point that I just keep hitting in my head as we're talking, that my player type might push against the way that this game is designed. And that's not their fault. It's just there's enough slop in the game and enough imprecision that would maybe be a segue to another topic. And then we can move on maybe because I want to talk about the precision of the controls again. Uh, that yeah, it's just sort of counter to my personality, my player personality. You know what I mean? That I don't like to lose Pikmin, but the game is designed to lose Pikmin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe, and so it's sort of like
Yeah.
and that's
In
people
particular,
bounce off games.
the vertical throws are terrible.
Yeah.
Having to throw, I forget what the name of it is, but there's a creature that flies and picks things up. I mentioned it last week, and so there's that, and then there's others where you have to throw basically up, and it just does not support that well, because it's hard to actually, especially things that are moving, to keep the target on it,
Hmm.
at all. If you can get it, like I think with some of the flying things, I never got the target on it. I was just trying to be close enough and face in the right general direction, and hope that I managed to land something on it. And then there was a boss, as I think you mentioned earlier, where you needed the yellows because you could throw them higher to throw it at some central point, but just hitting it was just sort of difficult. And you're kind of just trusting, and trying to pay attention. Are they hitting or not? So you're trying to both, manage the throwing, but also like make sure you're tracking whether they land or if they're hitting the thing in the air. And there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of good feedback on that for me, to make it clear that it was working. Well, with some of them it was fine, it was pretty good. It'd make a good sound, it would, and it would fall to the ground and be clear it was on the ground. But then of course it would shake them off. You're like, I got to do it again. And I found that loop often the most frustrating thing. And it becomes part of the boss as well, the final boss rather, to have to throw into the air. It wasn't difficult, but you did need to be the right distance and things like that. You just like, there's a lot to manage, that it doesn't support well, I think, with the throwing anything up into the air.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very like, yeah, I come back to the word slop, but it's a very kind of um flailing, I don't know, flailing kind of game. Like
Yeah,
spray
yeah,
and pray, it's
yeah,
like you're not going to be able to be precise. And I think they kind of designed it in such a way where you're going to have a group. You're not in full control of them really. You're going to lose some even going from point A to point B, which is like they're going to get stuck on stuff or whatever. And then when you throw, it's like it's a numbers game. I know you probably can get really good at it if you play it a lot, but even when you throw and hit things on the back, sometimes I'm not sure if it hit on the back or it's like the enemy's blocking it and they're on the other side, So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
just a lot of
I mean, it's even true
feedback
of
stuff.
it's true of the environment stuff too. I mean, sometimes I would throw them,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and I would, throw them too far. They'd end up on top of things, and or and sometimes that lack of precision, as we talked about last week with the box that you thought you could reach but you couldn't, um was it was because that clarity isn't there that it made it difficult, in a way that it really wasn't, I don't think, intended to be difficult.
Right.
It just wasn't clear. It was, I'm sure that's something that they refine. This is the first iteration. That's always,
Yeah. Yeah.
often an issue we have, right? Is that we're doing the first iteration of a thing. So,
Well,
uh,
and that's why I don't they don't they're not asking for forgiveness or anything, but
no,
I forgive them on this stuff even though I have a lot of frustrations and complaints, it sounds like, in this episode. I still, again, love the game. I think there's a lot of brilliant stuff going on, and I applaud them for coming up with a new concept of con- of groups of unit control. I won't even say RTS control because it's maybe more general than that, but they found a way to have a game about groups of units and not use a mouse. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And come up with something that would work on their controller and their console. And I just applaud them at that. Throwing is a cool thing. I love throwing. I love the act of it. It's just not quite, there as far as precision goes. And I did a quick analogy that I'll relate back to StarCraft because it keeps coming up as my main RTS touchstone. In StarCraft, for those who know the game or play, know of the factions in the game, I am always a Protoss player. I never play Zerg because the whole concept of the Zerg is expendability, right? You're sending hordes of units in to their deaths on purpose, and Protoss are more designed. You're going to lose units, but they're more designed. You're going to have fewer units. Each unit's more powerful, and you have to manage and take care of them. They have shields, they have recharging shields and things like that. So one of the things I love about that game is that asymmetry. And so, just to give you an example of kind of player type wise, I hate the Zerg because it's all about losing units, and just like that's where the Zerg rush, term comes from. You're just throwing bodies at them and overwhelming them, and that does work. I just don't like that feeling. So,
yeah. That's why I like the Zerg.
yeah, exactly.
You're
Yeah,
spreading their
you
creep
seem like a
around.
Zerg player.
You're spreading their creep around, and you're, throwing them all over the place. Let me get a ton of Zerglings and send them into the
Oh,
enemy base.
just the worst.
They're all gonna die. It's perfect. Well, were there any other topics? I don't. I mean, other than the final boss
Yeah,
thing that I was going to
you
mention.
should talk about your, because I didn't get there, and
Right.
it was when I will, but yeah, you should maybe we'll end on that.
Yeah, so I went into that, I ended with 226. So I probably started with closer to 300, probably. And I did really like that there was sort of a final exam on like how to overcome environmental challenges, not enemies, to the first part of the level. I mean, the level is basically like, hey, over there's an arena with the final boss. Um, but you got to get there. You got to figure out how to get there at all. And I appreciated that. Like, okay, there's basically two stages here. What I didn't appreciate, and of course, is partly on me. I had several days left. As I mentioned, I finished with 28, so I was on the 27th day when I got there, and I kept replaying the first part of the day to open up the path to the boss, um, and then dying on the boss. Or, I mean, we didn't die, but I lost so many units. I was like, well, I didn't figure out how to defeat it, and I lost, 100 units. I guess I'm replaying this day. So I replayed that same day several times. I think 4 times before I was like, you know what? I should just not attack the boss, just have the whole environment open and then go back, having lost nothing, save the day, even though I have time. It's funny because I was getting more and more efficient at the first part of the day. By the time I actually figured out how to beat the boss, I probably could have done it all in one day, but it
Hmm.
took like lots of tries. First of trying to do all at once, and then the second, and later, like, okay, now everything's open. I just have to get everybody there and kind of prep for the battle, and then execute. But even that took like, I don't know, 4 tries, and um, I definitely was at that point like, this final level is too much. It's one enemy and it's too much enemy, for me, for my taste. I wanted to feel triumphant, and I felt a little ground down, demoralized, I guess, as you said,
Mm.
by just like, I don't know what to do. Some of the things that you've been trained to do, like we talked about last week, there's an enemy type that will suck in a Pikmin and enrage it, and like, then you can attack it because it opens up. I thought something similar would be happening here, but no, if it you want to actually drop a bomb so that it sucks up the bomb, um, you don't want to throw things onto its back. You want to throw things onto its front. It went topsy turvy on me in all these different ways,
Mm.
and that made it like really hard to puzzle out. Like, what am I doing here? What am I not doing here? What am I missing? And I didn't need the blues either to fight it, which also felt like a kind of a missed opportunity. I needed the blues to get to it, but not to actually fight it. So, I don't know, not the best ending boss for me. I felt like there are definitely some things that I would have liked to see different there. I don't know what I would have done there. I'm not a designer, but definitely it felt like, man, why is if I had been there on the 30th day and had to do it all in one day, it would have taken me many, many tries,
Mm.
because I would have been, having to get there and actually have to be really efficient getting there and then be really efficient killing it. Because it took me like 3/4 of a day, to beat it, in the end. So it would have been really, really tight otherwise. So it's just a little bit
Hmm.
downer ending. I didn't really remember it from despite the fact that I did beat it before, but I definitely had that feeling of like, what am I doing? And thinking back, I was like, yeah, I don't remember knowing what I was doing on this either, and I didn't remember how to do it. So it was definitely it was an uphill climb, and that's not what I wanted to be kind of coasting down at the end.
Yeah, you bank those days, so you think you're banking those days to give you, which I guess it helped you somewhat because you could
Yeah, I
clear
could
the
just
path and then
save
end the day. So
prepped. Yeah,
that did help you, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like you played in such a way where you should be rewarded by that, more so.
and
Yeah,
I like the idea of having the environment be the challenge for that final day. Like, honestly, if I just had to get there to get the final piece and I had to do all these things together, that would have also been fine with me.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
didn't actually need a final boss.
We've talked about that so many times where the final
Yeah,
boss should be kind of more cake, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
make it, yeah. And it is very weird to me that we talked about this in pre-show, but it's very weird to me that they were teaching you things along. They're usually much better at teaching you things along the way to prepare you for final bosses and things like that. It's weird that that was actually counter in some cases. Um, that it was the opposite. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's non that doesn't sound like Nintendo uh, methodologies, I guess.
yeah. Well, I will say, a few odds and ends before we go to takeaways. One is that I counted the number of devs. You got to guess how many devs?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I have a question. I have
So
a
no, not
parting thought
localization.
question for you later too. But
Okay,
no, 30. Is
that's
that too?
that's a very good guess. I counted 34.
Oh, okay. I mean,
And then there are
once you brought it up as a question,
yeah,
I thought maybe it was going to be low, so
yeah.
I guessed low.
There were three that might have been producers, so I would probably count them in there as well. So then it would be 37. But they were kind of mixed in with like localization and tech support. So I was like, I don't know if these are, because credits are not standardized and they're certainly not standardized internationally. So what they call
Yeah.
different things is very different from what we call things. So I had no idea really, but
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
but small team
small team.
doing some pretty new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it does count. That did count, like executive producer and producer in Miyamoto was the producer. There was another person who was on, the executive producer. So there was a couple of production kind of level people, but not what we think of as sort of line producers. I'm not sure if those counted. And another thing that I don't think I've mentioned yet, but do you remember the code name for the GameCube?
The was it Dolphin? Is
It
that Dolphin?
was, which is the
Yeah.
name of the ship.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So there you
Yes.
go.
Okay.
And then
Well
the
done.
final piece, which I thought was very funny, was the secret safe. Um, I think is what it was called, and it was shaped like the top half of a piggy bank. I thought was very amusing, but also like opens up a lot of questions. is is Olimar from Earth, but he's really tiny, or did he come to Earth? Like, what happened here? Uh,
Well, there in one of the levels there's like a bottle, like a
yeah,
Coke
I
bottle.
mean, there's boxes as well, right? So it's
Yeah,
like,
right.
what,
There's boxes, so
with
yeah,
number,
it is. There's a lot of questions
there's a
about
lot of a lot of questions
the
to take away.
lore behind this
Yeah,
world building around this game. So I'm sure that beyond this, I mean, we know Calamity specifically. Beyond this, the Pikmin world is very well fleshed out and known by the fans. So
yeah,
because they're still going, so
yep.
that's great that they still are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're on Pikmin 4. Let's turn now to takeaways. You, sir, will go first. We may have some overlap here. Let's see. Normally we have some.
Yeah, I mean the my first takeaway is hitting the genre stuff directly, and specifically well, my first two takeaways are both genre focused, but from different angles. But the first one is just the concept of taking whether we don't know. I don't think we know exactly the order of operation, whether these genres were inspiring them or not. We know his garden inspired him, but of course, that's more of a maybe a spiritual inspiration, um, or what have you, more of a abstract inspiration. But when we talk about RTSs and puzzle, taking these tried and true genres and forming something unexpected and new from it, for me was a takeaway just as a reminder that we have fallen as a medium in these ruts of genres so much, and there's plenty of great games out there. We play them on the podcast. There's plenty of great indie games I know that break genres and expand upon them. So people are still doing this today every day. There's a game that's released that's probably some new merger, but in the time that Pikmin came out, it wasn't as common. And I would like to think that games like Pikmin helped influence the future, where people thought to themselves, well, I like this. I like peanut butter and I like chocolate, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
What if we, because I would never at that time as a developer, I would never have thought to put RTSs and puzzles together and a garden,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, that that was one.
Well, yeah, that one overlaps with me because I put it this way: there are probably other genres that can take a different approach, which is to
Yeah.
say, to break their conventions into something different. In particular, in this case, it was, hey, this thing that is very PC focused. How could we make it work on a console that is not just like cramming a bunch of controls onto the controller, which I think was basically the approach prior to this. Was like, well, let's minimize some things and then just like, I don't know, make people have crab hands to try to do all the things that they need to be able to do, and then make the camera move really fast. Like, I don't even know how they did some of this stuff, in RTSs that were on consoles before. This is like, you know what? Let's kind of take the feeling of that
Mm.
and make it its own thing that can work well, particularly on a console that is not, going to be able to draw, a billion units and things like that. I mean, the max is 100 Pikmin. Pikmin are very simple as a result. Their animations are very simple as well. They basically have a walk and a head bash and maybe a fly and a fall, a couple things like that. But then, because they're not many polys, they're kind of easy to do. So they really just kind of broke down everything, and rethought it. And I think uh, that's really good. I'll also say you kind of touched on my other one, which is drawing your inspirations from anywhere. Um, and like you said, abstract. I said don't make it one to one. So this is not a gardening game, but it is a game that's inspired by gardening. And not sometimes you can take the feeling of the thing that you like and turn it into a game and not just make it exactly the thing that you're doing. Um, so I will wrap that in there as well, because that was my other takeaway that I think is pretty important,
Hmm.
and what I really appreciate about this game, and knowing its kind of genesis. So since you touched on it, I figured I'd wrap both of those takeaways together. So I'll throw it back
Yeah,
to you.
I know. Speaking for myself, I definitely fall into the rut where inspirations for me, because I play so many games and just for fun. And you and I talk about games not just for the podcast. We all of us are always playing stuff. A lot of times, my inspirations, a lot, I would say maybe almost 100%, 90%, my inspirations are coming from gaming.
Right.
And this game is a good reminder that even though I'm a gamer at heart and I play a lot of hours of games every week. Um, Inspirations don't have to come just from games. Even if you're trying to genre blend or genre bend, uh, they can come from anywhere. Yeah, I mean, you actually ironically touched on my second one already too, and it really did come down to the translation
Mm,
of whatever this genre merger. So you kind of hit it already. It's like, okay, your summary was better in that, hey, we're gonna do this on a console, or we're gonna do this on, I won't even say console, we're gonna do this on a place that it wasn't before. And ensemble games and Halo Wars, and there's been a handful of RTSs, quote unquote, or any. We don't even have to focus on RTSs. We can focus on, like we did when we played Halo, shooters going to consoles. So there's always a handful of them that are trying to do it in a very, I guess I'll say, not obvious because it's still hard, but in a very logical way, trying to emulate, like in Halo Wars case, like how are we going to emulate an RTS on a console? But to your point that you already made, they just came at it from a different approach. It's like, we're not going to try to pretend we are giving you the same verbs that a mouse and keyboard would have, but on a console controller. We're just going to rewrite the rule book on what it is.
yeah.
It's still going to be vaguely unit control ish, but we're not going to be hamstrung by trying to translate. I never played the StarCraft console version that I think was on the N64 or something, but
Yeah.
I cannot imagine it being very
No,
good.
I can't. I can't imagine it at all. Yeah, I mean, things on consoles tended to be tactics and turn based
Yeah,
because
exactly.
of
Yeah.
the lack of buttons. Frankly, I mean the lack of a whole keyboard.
Final Fantasy
And
Tactics is a good example when you
yeah,
play
yeah,
it.
exactly. Or any of the things that came before it, like Ogre Battle and all those sorts of things, Tactics Ogre and um, etc. So it's like they're like, well, we want to have that kind of feel, but we don't want to do this. And other games have done this and taken their very PC focused games and put them on consoles. But usually it's not quite so radical. So well, my last one, and I'll go to your last one, is my negative lesson that I touched at the end. There is like, your final boss maybe doesn't have to be this hard, dude. And we talked. I'm not going to belabor it but it did today. It was just like, man, it leaves me like just exhausted at the end of the game when I shouldn't be. I should feel triumphant, like I did it, and there's not enough at the end of the game to counteract the feeling of getting to that point. It's not like, and then there was something easy. There was just some cutscenes in the credits, right? So it was, although there were little cutscenes for all of the enemy types, and they told you all their names, which I thought was fun. So that did kind of, if you stuck around for that, which I did, I liked. My favorite name was the Fiery Blowhog. I like that one. That's a good name.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, they
Yeah,
go through each of the units.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
It's very fun. But anyway, it definitely was like, I'm surprised they made that. This is not a company that I think makes that kind of mistake. Usually, like a Zelda game or something like that, the final boss is a challenge, but it's not so much of a challenge that you can't, in theory, get through it maybe on the first try. This one was so, like, I don't even, like, it's not telling me what to do, and a lot of the things countermanded, like we talked about in the discussion. A lot of the things I did with all the other enemies are not what I do here, and so figuring out what to do was a whole puzzle that I didn't need. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like um you haven't finished I don't think you finished Breath of the Wild yet, have you?
um no,
Zelda Breath of the Wild?
no, I
Yeah,
haven't.
so I was going to bring up Calamity Ganon, not to be confused with Calamity Nolan, just to be
No,
clear.
similar,
Calamity Ganon.
same beard, I think.
Yeah, that's very close. That is a really good example of them doing what you're saying the right way. I feel like that was a really fulfilling experience, but I didn't feel like it was too hard, you know.
Mhm.
And technically, if you're really good at the game, you can go and do it anytime,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
So they had that on them, but it's like it's a very bombastic, great multi-phase boss. But I think I've got it on the first try, you know. But I also
Mhm.
was pretty leveled up. You know, I had
Yeah, you had
leveled
all
up,
the
but
the
I
killer
was
weapons and
prepared.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they still got it, but of course, but that's a good counterexample of a more recent game. Um,
Your
yeah,
last one.
yeah. My last one is a funny one because it's pretty, I guess, intangible in some ways, but context and tone can change gameplay perception, is what I wrote down, which is super designery, nerdy, silly. But what I mean by that is, um,
They're
it
cute.
kind of, yeah, they're cute, they're cute, and the game in general is very light, right? It's a light-hearted game, but midway through the game, it really starts to escalate, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it really puts a stress on the controls and on the what they're asking of the player if you want to do it, you know, I guess the best you can and get all, you know, and clearly from what you're saying, get all the parts and stuff, and then the final boss is kind of the cherry on top of that. But I've constantly found this tension between the tone and the context of the game as opposed to what I was doing in the game, you
Mhm.
know, and how I felt about losing Pikmin, etc. There's even yeah, I won't go into the controls again because we've talked about it ad nauseum, but I think that they had programmed in some random moments when one of the Pikmin will trip and fall as they're
Yes.
following you.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is adorable, but why did you put that in there? I don't want to stop and wait for this Pikmin to get up that I had no control over, and so that's sort of, for me, it's a takeaway of like being careful that the context and tone does not fight some of the core um, goals of the game. Do you know what I mean? Because they're
Yeah.
both great in and of themselves. As an IP, Pikmin is amazing. Like, gamers know Pikmin. It's adorable. The music, like, it's got its identity is very clear, but you're doing some heavy gaming when you're playing this game sometimes, and you're losing your very cute units. So it was just an interesting takeaway for me that there's to think about that, I guess. Think about the merger of those two things as best as you can.
All right. Cool. Yeah, definitely a thing. Um, they are cute. Yeah, I also noticed that they'll fall. I do think those will catch up.
I know they
You can
do, but
kind of ignore it and like they'll catch up and it'll be fine. But yeah, I get it. I mean,
it's a
especially
psychological thing. It's like you see them, you're like, oh, yeah,
come
I'm
on,
just.
guys. Yeah, come on,
It's hurt.
come
It's
on,
a game
break it
about
up.
It's a game about herding cats,
Yeah,
and they're a little unruly and they get stuck on stuff,
yeah, yeah.
but it's like, no, I don't. I'm low on Pikmin right now. I don't want.
I
I
don't
don't
want to
want
deal with
any at
that.
risk.
Yeah, yeah. I get you.
Uh, yeah.
All right, let's just to do it, I want to make sure we get to the review we didn't technically get to last week.
Oh
So I
yeah.
sent that to you. I think we'll skip the emails. I don't know what we'll do next week, so we'll leave the emails to next week. But we did actually get an email from Benamanjaro, who is like, oh yeah, I didn't actually send the review. um, and he also said, I'll read a little bit from his email. He said, I loved Tim's immediate assumption to go to Spanish flair when pronouncing my name. It's so very quote unquote Tim to unknowingly attempt the most difficult path. On the streets, they call that taking the Longo way. And
Oh
he says
man.
in parentheses, they don't call it that. Brett got it with the Kilimanjaro Association, which I have sadly never visited. Anyway, he said it's just a terrible name bestowed on him from some college friends. But we did track down, I had already tracked down the review. He also sent it in. You go ahead and read it, and we'll get to the emails next week.
Okay, from Benamin Yarrow. Dev, yeah, he totally nailed me. By the way, that's me. Dev Game Club has, at the time of review, 469 episodes. What? Each one is at least an hour long, most longer. That means I've spent more than 20 days of my life listening to Brett and Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end, and I don't regret a single second of it. That was my exclamation. He just has a period. These guys serve up entertaining, educational, and in-depth glimpses into some of my favorite games of the past, and they do it with such intellect and wisdom that could only come from experienced industry veterans. I love their authenticity and passion, and my day is always brightened when I get to listen to Brett get into the weeds about how some system was architected, or Tim gets excited about some obscure lore. 5 thumbs up or stars? I meant stars. Thank you, Benamanjaro.
Yes. So there
Very,
you
very
go.
kind.
Yeah, it's very kind. Definitely appreciate that. And I think this is the only, maybe there might have been one other time where somebody reviewed us on something other than iTunes and we're like, yeah, I'm never going to see that. So please let us know when it happens. And Benamanjaro did do that for us, and we appreciate that. So I wanted to call that out. And of course, he sent that to devgameclub@gmail.com, which is where we get all your emails and reviews. We have some that we will read next week.
I'm looking at this one here from a little preview from Nolan about Pikmin. So
yeah, there's a lot of Pikmin info.
I'm excited to read that next time.
That'll be our follow-up on Pikmin. But we're running long, and Tim wants to go see a movie, so I'm gonna get us out of here. So anyway, you can send us email, as I mentioned. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host Twitch is at twitch.tv/Tim
Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Lately, it is The Adventures of Wrenchy, I believe is his name.
Yeah, Wrenchy the Clown.
Yeah, the clown with the killer wrench.
For those listening to this, tomorrow's stream, you're going to want to watch. I took Nolan up on his challenge, so I will be in costume for Wrenchy the Clown. Brett has seen a preview.
I have seen a preview, and I can't unsee the preview, so maybe I will stop by for a little Spelunky at the beginning.
Yeah, we'll definitely do the Spelunky daily, and that'll take about 30 seconds. And then I will put on a clown wig and nose and play as a clown, assassinating people.
Apparently. Yeah. I mean, you'll look like a clown as you play as a clown. Anyway, it's very meta.
Am I a clown to you?
Yeah.
Making that joke.
We do. There is a fan run Discord, and they are this weekend. We will remind you doing a charity event. All the details were up top. They'll also be in the show notes, as well as a link to join the Discord if you're interested. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, the Discord, our merch store, the site for defeatinggames.com, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun getting home or expiring trying this week, and good night.
Good night.